Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 8, Episode 16, The Pothole. Hello, everyone. I'm back. I'm so excited to be back on the pod. Taking a couple of weeks off, that was really nice, but I like being in a routine. I'm more of a routine person. As I say that, I'm like, am I though? Because I also like the days where I'm just like, I can just sit around and do nothing. It's a constant struggle. Any of you out there relating to this? It's like I hate feeling lazy, but then at the same time, I embrace my laziness. I think I actually have a good balance. Anyway, I'm perfect, guys. Let's move on. I'm recording this the morning before I have to go to Fort Collins, which is a little bit of a hike from where I live, but I booked a job. I'm excited. It's another one of those office industrial videos that's going to be shown to employees, and but it's got like a funny twist to it, which I love. If I still worked in corporate America, and I had to watch those kind of training videos or problem solving videos, I would have so appreciated if those had a comedic twist. They were always so dry and they never really kept your attention. But I think with comedy, you can get a point across, but you can also make it entertaining. So that's what I hope to bring to this job this afternoon. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a road trip. And then I've got my acting class tonight. So it's just going to be a lot of acting today, you guys. And I have no problem with it. It's exactly what I love to do. I'm also going to try and incorporate a little bit of Elaine Bennis into my work today for the job in Fort Collins. I'm basically playing an employee who's getting irritated with another employee for not complying with his job duties so that I can do my job. So it's kind of one of those things like I'm emailing one thing, but then I'm saying to the camera what I'm really feeling. And so I think I can channel some really like irritated Elaine, bring on some of that stuff she gives to Peggy or Mr. Peterman. There's a lot of Elaine I think I can pull from. So, of course, what would Elaine Bennis do? WWEBD or WWJLDD. Either way, this is the energy I'm bringing, and I think it's always 1000% correct energy. Another cool thing, my son is attending the Derek White Academy camp this week. For those of you who aren't the experts on the NBA and huge fans like I am, Derek White is a player for the Boston Celtics, and he just won the championship with his team this year. So he is an NBA champ, and my son is able to hang out with him this week and go to his camp. He's had some one-on-one conversations with them. He's told me it's very cute. Like my son tries to act like really cool and like nonchalant about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you get to talk to Derek? Or like, he's like, yeah, it's no big deal. So anyway, my son is really enjoying that camp. It's such a great thing that Derek White does. He's from the town where I live in Colorado, and he got his start here. It's a really inspiring story. I won't bore you with it, and I don't know all the details very well, so I'd probably get it wrong, but Derek White, look him up. He is a stand-up guy and a class act. All right, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for The Pothole is as follows. George jackhammers a repaired pothole in order to get back a talking Phil Rizzuto keychain. Jerry accidentally knocks his girlfriend's toothbrush into the toilet, causing him to refrain from kissing. She gets revenge by putting something of his in the toilet and not telling him what it was. Elaine uses a fake address in a janitor's closet in order to get Chinese food delivered. This episode was written by Steve O'Donnell and Dan O'Keefe, two Irish guys. Okay, we start out in Jerry's girlfriend's bathroom. Her name is Jenna. Jerry is in there and he's about to brush his teeth. She comes in and gives him the toothpaste that has baking soda in it. And Jerry's so annoyed. He thinks baking soda just brags too much. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. She leaves to get him a towel and he accidentally knocks her toothbrush into the toilet. He looks in there and he panics. He quickly fishes it out of the toilet and immediately starts washing his hands. But by the time he's done with that, he looks up and she is brushing her teeth with the toilet toothbrush. Uh-oh, he says. The actress in this scene is Kristen Davis. She plays Jenna. Now, she's very recognizable. I'm sure many of you know her from her portrayal as Charlotte York in Sex and the City, or maybe Brooke Armstrong on Melrose Place. Melrose Place? Which she had already appeared on Melrose Place when she got this guest starring role on Seinfeld. I absolutely love her. I know her as Charlotte. I didn't really watch Melrose Place, but I watched Sex and the City. I've watched it many times over. I really enjoy Kristen Davis as Charlotte. Now, I want to specify, I enjoy her from the original series. They sort of assassinated her character with the films and the terrible reboot and Just Like That. That's a whole other podcast, but man, they did Charlotte really bad. But anyway, I think she's really great as Jenna. She's effortlessly charming. She's just magnetic on screen. I think she's a little funny, and I really like her opposite Jerry. I think she was a great character. I kind of wish she hung around for a few episodes. A little trivia, she actually auditioned for the role of Sister Roberta in season 5's episode, The Conversion. All right, next we are in Monks. Jerry's explaining to George what happened, that she used the toothbrush. George thinks that, all the germs were probably gone by the time he grabbed it out because he grabbed it out so fast. Jerry's like, I don't really believe that theory. You're not a doctor. George asks him, was she mad? Well, turns out Jerry didn't tell her. Well, Jenna's a lot like me. George tries to define it. Finicky? Prissy? Fastidious? Jerry's like, yeah, I'll take fastidious out of those. Jerry notices George's Phil Rizzuto keychain, and he got it from Steinbrenner. He says, holy cow, when you squeeze the head. Kramer enters very perturbed. He's got some trash with him from the Arthur Burghardt Expressway. He dragged it for 5 exits. It's a big-ass sewing machine. He tells Jerry he's disturbed by the crumbling infrastructure. George squeezes his keychain. Holy cow! Kramer says, oh, look at that. A talking Nixon. All right, next, we're in Elaine's apartment. She's calling to order from China Panda and wonders if the supreme flounder on the menu is really being served in America for the first time. The guy confirms it very unenthusiastically. Yeah, first time. She gives him her address, and he says that they don't serve beyond her street since it's the delivery boundary. She's like, your guy can't cross to my side? Well, he says it would set a dangerous precedent. What's next, Mexico? She offers to meet him across the street, but the guy apologizes and hangs up. She calls back using a different voice. Yeah, I'd like to place an order. My take on this scene, setting up Elaine's plot here in this scene, it's a funny scene. I think it's really well done. The actor who plays the China Panda guy, he kind of gets all the funny. I love how he's like, what's next, Mexico? And also JLD's fake voice is really funny as well. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters announcing he's a papa. Turns out Kramer adopted a mile of the highway. He's part of the solution now, Jerry. He shows a picture to Jerry of mile 114. Oh, looks just like you. So what, you have to pay to keep it clean, Jerry asks. Oh yeah, they want you to use their services, but Kramer wants to do it himself. Parenting is about being hands-on. George enters in a panic. He can't find his keys. Kramer tells him to retrace his steps. Well, I woke up. I was supposed to go to work. I came here instead. Jerry tells him to use a spare set. Oh, I don't have one. All my keys say do not duplicate. Jerry and Kramer laugh at what a sweet kid he is. All right, next we're on the street. Elaine is waiting on the street for the China Panda guy. And she sees him approaching and pretends that she's coming out of this random building. He's a bit suspicious. Why are you here and not in your apartment? She's like, oh, I thought I'd meet you halfway. He asks if she really lives there. She's like, oh yeah. Hands him the money, tells him to keep the change, and she's kind of saying goodbye, kind of like, hey, you can leave now. But he watches her as she tries to get back in the building, and of course, it's locked. She can't get in. He sort of clears his throat. Fine. She hands back the bag. This isn't fair. This is address discrimination. My take on this scene, during the commentary, Jerry Seinfeld says something about this scene in particular, that he always loves unnecessary malevolence. And that's describing how this delivery guy is so mad at Elaine when really, why the hell should he care? Just take the money and go. That's what Jerry called it. And it was a perfect descriptor. Unnecessary malevolence. Like, there's no stakes for this guy. It's not going to affect his life if she just sits there and eats it or goes across the street and eats it. But I really appreciated that he acknowledged that, because I've always thought that's sort of the flaw to me in this storyline. And there's another big flaw that I'll point out later. But of course, with these types of shows, you have to just let that shit go. But anyway, it's a funny scene. I like how the guy is just so suspicious. And I also love JLD's physicality, trying to get back in the building, how she just keeps like, all right, see ya, like saying bye to him. She always does that so well. All right, next we're on the street. Jerry exits from the pharmacy saying he cleaned out their entire oral health shelf. George is like, so the plan is to secretly sterilize her mouth. Jerry confirms her mouth will be clean enough to eat off of. He asks George, is it safe to drink bleach if you dilute it? No, George says, it stings the throat. George is retracing his steps from earlier to figure out where he lost his keys. He was coming along here. He wanted cake, but it's morning. So he's like, I'll get a muffin. It's also a type of cake. So I sat on that bench and thought about it, 20 minutes, an hour. And he figured he'd see what Jerry was up to. Then it dawns on him, the broad jump over the pothole on 86th Street. So he starts running down there. So when they get there, George explains that he leapt over this pothole. He did hear a jingling sound, but he didn't want to check since he wanted to stick the landing. Anyway, they find it, and the pothole has been filled. And as the cars drive over it, you can hear his keychain yelling, "Holy cow!" All right, next we're in Jenna's apartment. Jenna is using all of the products that Jerry got her. The sterilization plan is in full effect. She's a bit skeptical. She doesn't really love the brush that feels like a blender, and the plaques taste like bleach. Well, she comes out and she says, my mouth feels so clean. She goes to kiss Jerry, but he has a flashback to the toothbrush in the toilet and backs away. He tells her, I feel a cold coming on. I don't want to give you my germs. Oh, okay. She's a bit suspicious. Thanks, I guess. Next, we're in Jerry's car. Elaine is riding with Jerry, and she's asking, so you still couldn't kiss her? Well, she's got an invisible taint, Jerry says. Oh, now you're finding fault on a subatomic level. Jerry wishes he could shrink down, maybe like in Fantastic Voyage, but it might be really scary. Elaine's like, okay, do you see what's going on here? Being really happy and clean? She tells him his tendencies have always been annoying, but they're just tendencies. But this is now bordering on disorder, and then he's just a few quirks away from full-on dementia. Jerry says, ooh, that could hurt me. Oh, and then Jerry points out that they're at Kramer's adopted mile. Should we stop and say hi? We've seen it. So Jerry honks at Kramer, who's on the side of the road cleaning. I'll see you at home, buddy, he says. Kramer thinks he's done, and then he sees a flattened can on the highway, and he pretty much almost dies trying to pick it up. Which, side note, is true. Apparently, Michael Richards was, of course, doing his Michael Richards thing and just going over the top. And apparently, they weren't stunt drivers. They were just extras driving these cars. And they weren't prepared for like what he was going to do. So yeah, they were like, yeah, Michael almost died making this episode. My take on this scene, I think it's a funny lecture that Elaine gives Jerry. That line is so good. Now you're finding fault on a subatomic level. Just a perfect line and perfectly delivered by JLD. All right, next we're at an apartment building. Elaine knocks on a door of a random guy and he answers. She introduces herself as his neighbor from across the street. She asks if she can use his apartment to order some food. What do you want? She explains about the flounder and how they won't deliver it to her side of the street. When is that? Elaine tries to be clear. No, I just need them to deliver it here, and I need to be inside is all. Who are you with? No, I'm just kind of hungry is all. Who let you in? She says the lock was broken. You just have to jiggle it. He shuts the door in her face. She's feeling pretty dejected, and then she notices a door across the hall that's wide open. It's the janitor's closet, and she gets an idea. My take on this scene, I used to be annoyed by this scene, but through the years, watching it so many times, I do find it really funny. I was always annoyed by the guy's responses and like how he delivers his lines, but Now I so appreciate this because I think his confusion is really realistic and JLD plays off of it so well. She's got this like desperation masked by politeness and charm. She's just like, I'm just hungry. And then also in this scene, we see her discover her next plan, which is, I guess, plan C, using this janitor's closet. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer is telling Jerry about cleaning his mile, which is mostly just rolling it all into the woods, apparently. He has a few signs that he's cleaning off in Jerry's apartment. Why he can't clean them in his apartment, we'll never know. He's so amused by this sign, the kids put a 1 in front of the 65 miles per hour. The kids with the spray paint. God love him. George enters. He can't get the city to make a pothole, of course. And Kramer tells him that, I met some maintenance guys today on the highway. They can probably help you out. Jenna buzzes, and Jerry tells the guys to leave. He has to ward off dementia. George and Kramer exit while Kramer is telling him to call him at call box 784. Jenna enters. She asks how he's feeling. He says, good. Says he's been waiting all day to kiss her. So she goes in to kiss him, and he backs away again. What? He tries to make an excuse about bruising his lip, but then he cascades into admitting what he'd done with her toothbrush. She's, of course, horrified. When were you going to tell me? Well, obviously never. Kramer enters. He needs his signs. We're kind of in the middle of something, Jerry says. Jerry helps him getting the signs out of his apartment, but when he's out the door, Jenna closes the door and locks it. He's knocking on the door to let him in, and she opens the door and tells him that now something of his has been in the toilet. What? Gotta run. She exits and he looks around terrified. Oh man. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry's on the phone with Jenna asking her about the different objects, whether that was what she put in the toilet, and she hangs up on him. Elaine's like, she won't even give you a hint? No, it could be anything. Well, Elaine thinks it could be his remote. Yes, Jerry throws it away. Or it could be your Walkman there. Jerry's about to throw it away. Are you just screwing with me? Yeah, I am, she says. Kramer enters, says he's really making a difference on the road. He also took out those bumps from the lane lines. Isn't that some kind of safety thing? Well, he says I had to remove them in order to widen the lanes. Just like they have first class in planes, he's going to bring that concept to mile 114. Elaine's like, how are you going to widen the lanes? Oh, you just block out lane lines 1 and 3, and a 4-lane highway turns into a 2-lane comfort cruise. He asks Jerry if he has any black paint. Yeah, in the tool shed next to the riding mower. Elaine calls China Panda and orders the flounder. She gives her address, apartment 1Q. Jerry asks where apartment 1Q is. She proudly tells him it's the janitor's closet across the street. All this trouble just for flounder, he asks. Well, it's better than eating it alone at the restaurant, like some loser. Kramer says how that flounder is unbelievable. He'd eat it out of a dumpster. How do you know about it? She says. You're not in the delivery zone. He says that Newman runs fish for China Panda on the weekends in his mail truck. Well, Elaine has to leave because hers is coming in 10, so she exits. All right, now where's that tool shed? Kramer asks. Tool shed, stock room. Jerry really tricks Kramer with these secret rooms that he doesn't have. All right, my take on this scene, Elaine is having more fun here with Jerry, screwing with him, which I love. I always love the delivery of that line. Well, it's better than eating it alone in the restaurant, like some loser. Oh, it's so well done. Now, okay, here's the other big flaw in this plot line that we have to just let go. Why doesn't Elaine just get takeout? Now, this was brought up a lot as kind of a goof on the IMDb page. But hey, you know what? We just have to assume that she doesn't want to do that. She just wants the delivery. But it's fair to say that the effort that she puts into the whole janitor's closet gag is more trouble than just going to the restaurant and picking it up. But I digress. We just have to believe this is what Elaine wants to do. The sheer determination she has to get this flounder. Now, I've never eaten flounder, so I did a little research. I was just curious. I'm like, is flounder like some really coveted fish to eat? And here's what I found. It says, flounder's taste is a symphony of delicate flavors. Its taste is often described as mildly sweet with hints of brininess and a slight nutty undertone. The flavor is not overpowering, allowing the natural taste of the fish to shine through. All right, cool. I mean, it sounds good. I'm not a huge fish person. I don't have a large fish palate. It's not my first choice. But I was just always struck a little bit by how obsessed she is to get this flounder. And then I posted this on the socials for the podcast. Like, what is your janitor closet dish? What would you go to all this trouble to get delivered to you? Like, what is that food that you're like, oh my gosh, I need it. It's so delicious. And it's hard to choose for me. But I do think some like fresh sushi, a spicy tuna, spicy salmon roll that's a little bit zhuzhed up. I cannot resist that. If I'm in a Mexican mood, maybe like a really saucy burrito. It's obscene how I eat a burrito like that. But I also love a creamy pasta dish. So, I mean, it could be any of those. I would maybe go to great lengths for. And I can relate to Elaine a little bit here. I did recently go through this. I mean, we're so spoiled now with food delivery apps. We got Uber Eats, we got Grubhub, etc. I tried to order from this poke place that I love. I'm obsessed with it, kind of like Elaine and the Flounder, but I wasn't in the delivery zone. I got a big old, sorry, this restaurant does not deliver to your address on the app. So I opted to pick it up myself, not find a random closet. I just picked it up myself. All right, next we are in apartment 1Q, written on duct tape. The China Panda guy knocks and he waits for a few beats, knocks again. Elaine emerges with a towel on her head. She says, sorry, didn't hear you. I was in the shower. Quickly hands him the money and takes the bag. He tries to get a peep into the apartment, but she shuts the door. My take, it's really funny. Elaine is so committed. I love the addition of the towel on the head. Really, really drives it home. All right, next we're on the street. George is meeting up with the maintenance guys to help him get the keys. Well, the maintenance guy gives him the runaround until George figures out that they want money. And then we see a quick scene of Kramer on the road, cones on the back of his car, getting honked at because he's going like 4 miles an hour. But he's doing that so he can paint the lane lines black, which we see him doing. Operation Comfort Cruise is underway. Next, we are back at apartment 1Q. Elaine is exiting, still chewing on that flounder. A woman walks by and asks what she was doing in there. Elaine sort of stutters an answer and decides on, I wasn't in there. You were hanging around in there, lazing on the job when you should have been down in the basement cleaning out those old carpets and scrap wood. Right, Elaine figures out, because I'm the janitor. Don't get smart with me. Yes, ma'am. The actress in this scene is Soraya Carroll. She plays Mrs. Allister, who I'm assuming is the super, maybe? She definitely has some kind of authoritative role in this building. Now, she's also appeared in Strong Medicine and Men Behaving Badly, and it looks like she's more of a theater actress out in Chicago. And I think she's great. I love her energy and the way she intimidates Elaine. I love I wasn't in there. Like, what? That's the best you could do, Elaine? So this whole misunderstanding about her being the janitor leads into like the subplot of Elaine's storyline, playing the janitor just to get this flounder. And I love the vibe between these two women. They're so funny. Elaine takes that low status here. And I love that at the end. Yes, ma'am. She's so scared of her. All right, next we're in Kramer's bedroom. Kramer's alarm wakes him up. It's the radio DJ saying that there's a mess on the ABE because all of a sudden it goes down to 2 lanes without warning at mile marker 114. Someone screwed up big time. It's a parking lot out there. Kramer's listening to this like, what? Next, we are back at apartment 1Q. Elaine is in there when Jerry arrives. Oh, it's you. He asks if the flounder's there yet. She's like, nope. You want the tour? He enters and she says, there's this. French doors would really open this place up. Oh, but you have a slop bucket. There's a knock on the door. The fish! Elaine is so excited. Well, turns out it's George. He's waiting downstairs for the jackhammer. He thought he'd drop by. George got Kramer's guys down to $50 and he just has to do all the jackhammering himself. Oh, like a hard labor fantasy camp. That's a great line. Kramer busts in and knocks everyone over like dominoes. He loves the place, of course. Oh, sweet setup. He asks Elaine if she has any paint thinner. I'm plumb out, she says. Ugh, he needs to get the paint off the highway, otherwise he might lose his baby. There's another knock at the door and a woman says, janitor. Ugh, it's Mrs. Allister. Elaine needs to get out. She's trying to get the guys out of the way. So finally she gets out and she gets yelled at for not clearing out the trash from the basement. Some of the children have been playing near it and putting it in their mouths. Well, a lot of it is vegetables. Well, Mrs. Allister is not amused. He tells her, you better get that stuff out of there today or you'll be out of here, understand? Elaine says, yes, ma'am, again. And then the guys spill out of the closet. Kramer spilled ammonia. Jerry doesn't feel like eating anymore. And Kramer takes a chain with him. Elaine explains to Mrs. Allister, janitor's meeting. My take on this scene, it's such a classic and funny scene. I love when all four of them are together. You guys know this. I've said this so many times. Those scenes are always the best scenes. And the fact that they're all together in this closet, it's this small space. It's so delicious. And also, it's really clever too. We get an update on all of their storylines. So not only is it a funny visual, funny physical comedy, but we're like, all right, now we know what's going on with everyone. Now, I will say, I do wish we got to see Elaine enjoying this fish. Like, I weirdly wanted to see her eating it, or at least gushing about it, being like, oh my God, I had the fish. It was amazing. Like, was it all worth it, Elaine? Like, clearly she's had it once and she's back in there to have it again. So, I mean, obviously she loves it. But I somehow I wanted the satisfaction of actually seeing her eat it. Everyone bumping into each other is so well done. We get another confrontation with Mrs. Allister, which is really fun. And the stakes are getting higher. You know, I like how she's like, you'll be out of here, understand? And then everyone pouring out is great. Elaine's face, the shift in her expression when she hears the guys just coming out, she's like, oh my God, these stupid idiots. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jenna arrives and she asks, oh, why'd you want to see me? He tells her they should put all this silliness aside. I know now you didn't put anything in my toilet. Did you? Yes, I did, she says. Well, whatever. How have you been? Good. Was it a steak knife? It's just eating away at you, isn't it? She says. No, he denies it. Elaine enters. She greets Jenna and Jerry. She says, I need to borrow your car to haul some dirty garbage to the dump. Sure, Jerry puts on a front that it's totally okay. Oh, actually, it's pretty grimy. No problem. Put it all on my leather upholstery. He hands her the keys and she says, I don't know who you are, but thanks for the car. And Elaine exits. You see, he tells Jenna, just lent his car to Elaine so she can put all sorts of... All right. Says that he's going crazy, that his car was his only germ-free sanctuary. He slept there last night. Now, please tell me, what did you put in my toilet? She says, toilet brush. Okay, I can replace that. She asks if they want to order dinner, and he says, yeah, but let's go to your place because I threw out all my dishes. We see a quick shot of Elaine carting carpet and trash down the sidewalk, passing George, who is jackhammering away on the pothole. They kind of acknowledge each other. And we also see Kramer lifting a huge can of paint thinner into his trunk. My take, not much to say here. You know, Elaine's portion is pretty short and we just needed to move this story along. But I like how it's done. Since Jenna is there, Jerry has to act all fine with Elaine putting trash in his car. I do love the delivery, like, I don't know who you are, but thanks for the car. Elaine just keeps calling Jerry out on this one. I love it. And I do love that shot of Elaine walking down the street and George, and they just kind of like nod at each other. Very funny. All right, next we're in Jenna's apartment. Jerry and Jenna are having a good time laughing and eating some Chinese takeout. He tells her how he's never going to let some hygienic mishap get in the way of what could be a meaningful, long-lasting relationship. Then we cut to a shot of George jackhammering and we hear kind of a ping sound. Then the ground starts to rumble. Back at Jenna's, she asks if Jerry hears something. There's a rumbling in her apartment. She goes to check on it and sees that her toilet is vibrating. Back on the street, all of a sudden, a huge geyser of dirty water spews up with Phil Rizzuto's head on top. Holy cow! We see Jenna bend down over her toilet, and Jerry continues with his declaration that he's a changed man. Clean, dirty, whatever. Then we hear water rushing and Jenna scream, and Jerry rushes over to her bathroom where she's covered in toilet water. Holy cow, he says. Have a nice life, and exits. All right, next we're at mile 114. Elaine is driving Jerry's car. She's all dirty from her hard labor getting the garbage loaded into Jerry's car. She drives into mile 114 and marvels at the 2-lane highway. Wide lanes. Oh, this is so luxurious. And we see a shot of the car really spreading out and weaving from side to side, enjoying the wide lanes. And as she's doing that, a sewing machine falls out of the trunk. The sewing machine again. We see Kramer getting the paint thinner out of his trunk, but he drops it, of course, and it spills everywhere. Newman is in his mail truck driving along, and he's in a great mood singing the Commodores. And then we see the sewing machine in the road, and he runs it over. What the hell was that? The sewing machine is dragging under the mail truck, just sparking everywhere. As he drives over the flammable paint thinner, the truck goes up in a fireball, and Newman screams, "Oh, the humanity!" There's a tag in the episode. Kramer's trying to get out of there with the empty can in his trunk. Newman is all crispy and he walks by in shock, and Kramer can't get his attention. Well, he hears sirens in the distance and he's got to get out of there. "I'll meet you at the coffee shop," he tells Newman. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side.
This is an important year. Who you vote for will determine the fate of this country. Which side are you on? Are you undecided? How the hell are you undecided? Which sandy beach is your head planted in? Grow up! Well, there is one issue we can all agree on. Proposal 1Q, address discrimination from food delivery. We've all suffered from living outside the boundaries of a restaurant's delivery zone. You're hungry, you're lazy, you're American. You want your food now, wherever you are. Proposal 1Q says that no restaurant has the right to refuse delivery based on where a person lives. The stats don't lie. In cities where restaurants enforce their communist boundaries, more people urinate in the streets, no one uses their turn signals, and the kids can't read. Vote yes on Proposal 1Q and tell restaurants to get over themselves and just bring you food. Otherwise, your kids will not only be hungry, but also really dumb. Proposal 1Q, because God doesn't care where you live. Why should a restaurant?
And we're back. Okay, some of the extras were interesting. In the inside look, Jerry Seinfeld says that this is one of his favorite episodes. In fact, he had a DVD specially, or DVD or CD, I don't know. It was a disc. They said disc, specially pressed with this episode on it because he just loved it so much. And he says it's because he loves how the stories sort of naturally weave together. They didn't have to force anything for the characters to interact, which is pretty true. I do think they do a good job with that. In the notes about nothing, they note that this is the 150th episode of Seinfeld, and this is my 144th episode of the podcast. So there are a total of 6 episodes, I guess, that Elaine does not appear in. They also point out how Elaine really has bad relationships with Chinese restaurants. We got the Chinese restaurant episode where she's so pissed about the wait. And then we got Hop Sings where she gets Ned blacklisted. So I think that's really interesting. There's something with Elaine and Chinese restaurants. It just never goes well. There was supposed to be more dialogue in the scene where the delivery guy catches her not living in the building where she's standing in front of. And she tells him that, "Oh yeah, no, I've lived in this building all my life. I was born in the basement. I had my Sweet 16 on the roof." And at the very end of that scene, when she gives the bag back, she's supposed to say, "This is address discrimination. Mr. China Panda, tear down this wall." So a little parody of the Ronald Reagan line to Mr. Gorbachev. All right, now it's time to open Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. So this is what Greg had to say about the Pothole. His overall thoughts, he says, "This episode is full of ridiculousness, and while all 4 stories are so beyond dumb, there are a few laughs, mostly in Elaine's plot of trying to order Chinese food from a restaurant that doesn't deliver to her address. Although why doesn't she just pick up the order from the restaurant? She's really going to go through these shenanigans?" I don't want to say that I dislike this episode, but it's not among the strongest. Yeah, we're on the same page here, Greg. I just went through how Jerry Seinfeld says this is one of the best episodes. Apparently, Andy Ackerman also won, I think, an Emmy for the directing of this episode. It's just like, wow, what am I missing? Again, I'll get more into it with my final thoughts. But yeah, I'm kind of on the same page there. Yes, and you brought up the flaw that's been brought up many times. Elaine, just go pick it up like I did with the poke. Like, just have to go. If you really want this food masquerading as a fake janitor, it's a little too much. But again, we just have to let it go. The comedy is broad here, and we just have to, I guess, be along for the ride. Oh my gosh. And speaking of being along for the ride, I took my kids to Cedar Point. This is a hard left turn. I'll get back to Greg's Sack Lunch in a second. For those of you familiar, Cedar Point is, I think, definitely the best amusement park in the United States, if not the world. And I say that only being to Cedar Point, really. But oh my gosh, it was a place I went to when I was younger. And I mean, my childhood, every summer, pretty much, we would make a trip to Cedar Point. My kids loved it. We weren't sure, you don't know how your kids are going to do on these big, big roller coasters. And frankly, I wasn't sure at my age now how I would do on them, but oh my God, we had the best time. Anyway, highly recommend Cedar Point. This is not an ad. They're not paying me. I wish they would. But anyway, all right, back to the sack. Next are Greg's favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says, Elaine going through all these extremes does give us some good comedy for her. My favorite scene is when all four of them are jammed into the maintenance room, and I love how she and George cross paths as janitor and road worker. How many times is she going to order this flounder that she's willing to actually do the janitor work? That's what I mean, man. She is just so obsessed and determined to get this flounder delivered. And also, I just thought of this. Jerry comes over to the janitor's closet to, I think it's implied to share the flounder. He wants to eat it. Now she's got someone else. Like, just the two of you go to the restaurant. You're not going to be a loser eating it alone. Oh, so many holes. But again, yeah, we get the scene in the closet and it's so funny. And these holes just have to remain holes and we have to accept them, everyone. I don't know how else to help you, but just say Elaine, for whatever reason, doesn't want to make her way there. She doesn't want to eat in the restaurant. I think you know what it is. Elaine just needs some more excitement in her life. She's not dating anyone. Her job's pretty mundane at this point. Why not? Why not make an adventure and be a janitor in order to order food? Next, Greg says, my actual favorite story here might be Kramer's, which never happens. Adopting a highway and trying to keep it clean and then widening the lanes is so weirdly believable for him. It cracks me up when Elaine is cruising in the new wide lanes like she's sitting in the lap of luxury. Oh, I love that too. I love that we actually see it come to fruition and it's Elaine that's enjoying it. It's a stupid thing we say in my house too. Whenever my husband's out of town and he's taking his car like on a road trip or something, I get the garage all to myself, the 2-car garage. So I'm able to just like park it in the middle. So I'll be like, so luxurious, wide lanes. I say it to myself. And sometimes I say it when the kids are in the car and they're like, what? Whatever. I'm the weird Seinfeld mom. I've accepted it. As far as favorite storyline, I agree. This Kramer storyline, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely very believable for him. I mean, the adopt a highway thing, you always see those signs and you're like, how do people come to this decision to do this? I mean, all I can say is there must be some like tax break or something to do this. It's usually like companies who do this. How much does Kramer have to pay to adopt a highway? Whatever, all details that shouldn't matter and I shouldn't care about. But yeah, I think I'll get more into it at the end, but for me, I think Jerry's storyline is my favorite. I think it's really funny, the whole finding fault on a subatomic level. All right, next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He says, none of this is great, so it could be cleaned up a lot. JLD needed something with a little more meat, but then again, all of them did. This is like an episode of random ideas that they wanted to use up. I kind of agree with that. Yeah, they're all kind of weird and random, but I also like Jerry says, one of his favorite parts of this episode is that everyone weaves together somewhat naturally. And finally, Greg's extra thoughts. He says, other than Sex and the City and one episode of Friends, this is the only time I've seen Kristen Davis in anything. She's perfectly fine in this role, and I like how she gets her revenge on Jerry, knowing how obsessed he is with cleanliness. Yeah, I think she's great. I think there's something about Kristen Davis, and I felt the same way in Sex and the City. She's just... It's one of those, first of all, I think she's so incredibly beautiful. And so like her expressions and just her persona, there's just something really magnetic about her. I love watching her on screen. She got crap for the reboot. She definitely, she went overboard with the fillers. And it broke my heart. Again, my theory, I've said it before, I think, on this podcast. I've definitely said it before in life, but it's the most attractive women, the prettiest, naturally prettiest women who do all this shit. And it's like, I just think they're so used to looking perfect. Like when they look in the mirror, they're like, yeah, this is great. When they're younger. And then as soon as any kind of sagging or wrinkles start happening, like they're so used to not having to deal with imperfections that they're like, oh my God, I better get on this. And then they overdo it. I don't agree with, like, she got a lot of shit online for that. Big surprise. The internet is just such a cesspool of trolls. But, I also feel for these women because people are not kind to actresses looking old. How dare they? How dare they age and show what really happens to their faces? What the fuck? And then, oh my God, gross. Look at all this filler. She looks like a freak. It's like, good God, these women cannot win. So my kind of, oh no, why did she do that kind of thing isn't a criticism. I know why she did it. But I feel sad sometimes for these women that they're not in an environment where they feel comfortable to age naturally. And look, I'm not saying I'm any better. I feel the pressure and I'm just a freaking mom in the suburbs in Denver. Like, I can't imagine if you're in Hollywood where that's just everywhere. Everyone around you is doing it. So it becomes normalized. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox. Back to Kristen Davis. I like her. I really like her in pretty much everything. Like I said, I wish that there was a little bit longer of an arc with Jerry. I know she comes back as revenge. She's dating Banya and she's in a really quick scene. And finally, Greg says, Wayne Knight's cameo is brilliant in this one because he comes out of nowhere at the end. I love that he's belting out 3 times a lady before he goes up in flames. A great silly end to all this foolishness. I have a great memory of that last scene where he goes up in flames and he's like screaming and the humanity. A cousin of mine, he was visiting, and I think this episode had just come out maybe, and we had it on tape because we taped all the Seinfelds. And so I think I had it on and he was just like, he comes out, he's like, oh, what is this? And he wasn't that familiar with Seinfeld, but he made me rewind that ending. I'm not even exaggerating, no less than like 15 or 20 times. He laughed so hard at Newman's part at the end that, I was like, are you okay? I mean, it's funny, but, but it's a nice fond memory I have of that moment. Thank you so much, Greg. We so love your thoughts every week. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. I love the delivery, no pun intended, of her saying that she doesn't want to eat it alone in the restaurant like some loser. It's the look on her face, just how like, duh, Jerry, I can't do that. Always makes me laugh. And a close second is when she's talking to that man across the street in that building when she says, I'm just kind of hungry is all. You can really feel that desperation in that moment. And my final notes of the episode, I think it's solid. I don't share Jerry's love for it as one of the best episodes, but I think it's entertaining. It has great moments. It makes me giggle. I do like how quirky and focused Elaine's storyline is. Like, this is all she wants. She wants flounder and she's willing to go to great lengths and small spaces for it. Literally willing to do hard labor for this delivery. So it's one thing. Elaine wants one thing. A lot of times in improv, I know you guys were hungry for my next improv lesson. When you think about your character you're playing, what is the want? What is the want of your character? And keep that in focus as you act through the scene. Now, especially in improv, because you're coming up with it on the spot, you really do need to rein in, like, you have so much freedom in improv, but you also have to rein in certain elements like, hey, I am this character. This is what the character wants. I have to yes and let me pay attention to the environment, what's been established. So I just love that Elaine's want is flounder and delivery of that flounder. And from that, we get a bunch of scenes with her as a janitor. It's fantastic. Now, speaking of that, I would have loved to have seen more of Elaine being a janitor. I think we needed more scenes of that. Like maybe that guy from across the hall has another interaction with her. He once again keeps responding to her with responses that don't make sense. It is funny, as it is, but we could have swapped out some of the dumb George storyline. For me, George's storyline is the weakest. Jason Alexander does his best with it, but I have no interest in the stupid Phil Rizzuto thing. So I think we could have swapped some of that out. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they could have combined Elaine and George's storylines so that he could have gotten something better. Whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to see Elaine as a janitor. More interactions with Mrs. Allister would, of course, be great. So that's kind of my scene swap idea. And I think that's all I can say about the Pothole. So glad to be back. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to rate and review the podcast. It really does help. And follow the podcast on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you want to go old school and email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.